Arena is a place where hunters are allowed to conduct deadly duels. Most hunters come here to sharpen their combat skills. There are two types of battles. One is peaceful sparring, limited in time, and the other is a fight to the death, which ends only after the death of one of the fighters. Ran entered the room, following behind the Huwangshu guild. Suddenly he looked away and looked at something questioningly. They were the guys from the guild who had a lot of sparks around them and sharp axe blades in their hands. The other girl had a magic staff and they were ready for battle. The guy looked him in the eye and asked him to go faster so that he wouldn't waste their time, after which he asked him a question. Is he really so worried because this is his first time? The other girl clasped her hands in front of her and spoke so that the others would just look at him. He has a weak freak written on his forehead. The guy laughed and asked her to be gentle with him. In this case, Ran got angry, balled his hand into a fist. But didn't answer them. He was asked what had happened. Had he already shat himself out of fear? If he got down on his knees and begged, maybe she would forgive him. What would he say? After this suggestion, she laughed and took out the sharp dagger in her hands. After a moment, she continued to speak, and if he refused, she couldn't guarantee that she would be gentle with him. Another guy passing by told him to beg them before it was too late. If he didn't want to suffer, Ran replied with confidence in his eyes. There's no need for that. At this moment, a guy came up to them who greeted them and explained that he was the manager of this arena. Before starting a fight in the arena, they must register and choose the type of competition. The girl approached him and replied, "Of course, this is a peaceful sparring. They just want to show the guy how to lie face down in the mud." The other guy laughed and said she can improve her winning percentage in the arena. She pointed her dagger at him and said with a smile she won't miss this opportunity. The manager approached Ran and asked if he had any objections. He replied that he would like to choose a fight to the death. The manager didn't expect such a response and only took a deep breath, after which he said that to choose this type of battle, he needed the permission of the abyss from the hidden boss. The girl smiled at his words and asked the question. Little prick, is he looking forward to dying? Does he want to join his friends as soon as possible? He probably doesn't even know what abyss resolution is. He took out the roll of paper in his hand and asked again. Are they talking about this? The manager told him that this was exactly what he needed. Some strange guy, after seeing what he saw, told the others to look at it. This guy has the permission of the abyss. It will be interesting to watch their fight. At this moment, the girl was dumbfounded and asked again with a frightened expression. Where did he get this from? It's only a bronze rank. The other guy also got angry and asked again. He couldn't possibly have defeated the hidden boss. He stole it, didn't he? The girl continued to say in a dumbfounded state that it was simply impossible. The guy looked in his direction without saying anything and Ran asked them a question. Now they can fight to the death, the manager replied. Of course, if he has the permission of the abyss, then the other party can't refuse him. The girl looked at him with a deep, frightened look and thought, no, this jerk couldn't have killed the hidden boss. He must have obtained permission through some sneaky trick. She shouldn't worry. She'll definitely get through it. A strange guy called the rest of the guys to watch this fight and said, here, everyone should go here. He had heard that someone was about to fight to the death. The other guys started to get closer to him and he kept trying to persuade them. Seriously, you can't miss this. He had never seen a deathmatch before and I kept trying to persuade the guys to go and see it. It must be some kind of blood feud. Who knows, maybe it's because of the winnings. The system window shows Song Ran healer results, 0 wins, losses, draws, Liu Mei Lai, assassin results, 16 wins, 0 losses. 2 draws. Mei Lai turned to him and asked, well, kid, did he see her results? Is he already regretting his choice? He shouldn't worry. She wouldn't tear his corpse to pieces. The surrounding people looked in their direction in puzzlement and wondered, is he a healer? Is this some kind of joke? There's nothing to see. It's not worth their attention. They'll just kill him, Mei Lai said with a smile as she looked into his eyes. Baby, she's starting. She swung her dagger right at him. He didn't move and spoke. She constantly says some nonsense. How tired he is of it. After saying that, he took out his sword and was fully prepared for her attack. She looked at him with a menacing look and said, trash. He's going to die today. After these words, she rushed to run and attack him. The surrounding people watched with bated breath what was happening in the ring. At this moment, a girl from the crowd went around to answer the incoming call on the phone. She said, is this the boss? It's her Bai. Beads of sweat began to roll down her face from fright, and she said, even though this is a fight to the death. What can you expect from a bronze rank? The boss yelled at her to do what he told her. Stop talking this nonsense. She threw down the phone, waved her hands and replied. Okay, I understand. She will start right now. At that moment, she started the live broadcast from her phone and wondered why he always did that, but there was nothing she could do about it. When she started broadcasting, she said loudly to the audience, "Hello everyone. She's Tang Xiu Bai. She'll be broadcasting a live broadcast of the deathmatch right now. They should not forget to like and subscribe." When the fight between them started, all the people started shouting various exclamations from overflowing emotions. Mei Lai stopped a few meters in front of him and thought he doesn't know when to stop. Then she said today she'll show him what it's made of. After that, she abruptly began to offend in his direction, saying that he would see the incredible speed of the killer as she approached. She began to wonder what a shame it was that a pathetic healer would dare raise a sword against an assassin. But that was all he could do. Ran remained motionless as she laughed at him and said trash. With his level, he wouldn't even be able to see his shadow. She laughed again, and he looked her in the eye and said really. After asking the question, he chuckled. She raised her sharp daggers at him and wondered, is he still so cocky? Well, it's a pity that you have to use your abilities on such trash. It's a pity next to her. She was rushing around him quickly, but when she got close behind him, she decided to use the backstab ability. Ability description: an active ability that requires hitting an opponent in the back to activate, increases the chance of a critical attack by 15%, increases the attack power by 15%, and applies a stun effect to the victim for 1.5 seconds. There was a fierce fire in her eyes and she wished he was dead. At this moment he only averted his gaze in her direction, then turned around abruptly. His eyes lit up with a magical color and he was able to easily dodge her attack. The surrounding people were very surprised by what was happening and started asking questions. Did he dodge the backstop? Wow, he's really lucky. Had the killer missed? Someone answered this question with confidence, and they think so. He turned to look at her and wondered. So this is the amazing speech she was talking about. Unfortunately, it's too slow for him. She looked after him and said it's strange. He's only a bronze rank, but he rejoices early. At that moment she recalled the system window with their data and thought even though he was able to dodge her backstab, his rank is still much lower than hers. She would crush him without even using her abilities. She went to attack him again and shouted loudly here. This is the difference between their ranks. She pointed her gun at him. He intercepted it with ease and said to her, "It's strange. She doesn't look strong." She was dumbfounded after what was happening and looked at him with frightened eyes. That's impossible. He shouldn't be told that he's hiding his real rank. The surrounding people watched them with bewilderment and one of the guys said it seems that this healer is strong. He is confident in his abilities. Mei Lai looked at him with a malicious look and thought, okay, since he's not as weak as everyone says, she'll take him seriously. She'll destroy him. She used an innate ability and everything around her lit up with a bright red color. She took advantage of the mist of deception, swung her sword and said to him he was stronger than she expected, but he couldn't stand up against his innate abilities. He reached out through the fog and asked her fog thick as water. It doesn't want to upset her, but her innate ability is pathetic. After saying that, he pointed his sword and mentally said petrify. He made a sharp movement with his hand several times and the surrounding people did not understand what he was doing at all. Someone laughed and thought it looks like this is the so-called legendary fog. Is he swinging his sword in frustration? This assassin's ability is incredible. One of the girls opened her mouth in surprise and told the others to wait. They should take a look. It looks like the fog is slowly clearing. Does the sword swing help? This is some kind of joke, right? The fog is slowly disappearing. At this moment, Mei Lai's sword was shrouded in mist and split into pieces. She shouted, "How is this possible?" Her innate ability was cancelled. What did he even do? She was right behind him and swung the knife at him. And he looked in her direction and asked, did she know? At that moment, a stream of blood flowed out of her mouth and she fell to the floor. He ran towards her and shouted, "Arrogance can be costly." All the surrounding people widened their eyes in fright and surprise and continued to watch the scene in silence. The Huang Tiu guild reacted with the same method. Ran came closer to her, put his sword to her, and she looked at him with a hard stare and he asked the question, "What is it?" She doesn't want to be sarcastic anymore. She was completely spurting blood, kept coughing and couldn't understand. He's only a bronze rank. How did he do this? He told her he was just passing by. There was no need to insult him. She started to choke and say it was all because of, but before she could finish, the system window congratulates Ran and informs him that he has unlocked a new form of his weapon, Bloodbath. His weapon has a skill mode activated paired possession. He saw it and spoke. He reached his domain by defeating the assassin. How ironic. The system window indicated the winner and all members of the Huang Tu guild. One of the guys said angrily, "What a horror, he underestimated this kid. And how would they explain everything to the guild leader?" Bai continued to film everything on her phone and said, "Just now, the bronze funnel hunter dispelled the fog of deceit with the assassin and instantly killed her. Is he really just a healer?" When Bai was broadcasting, she greeted the audience and said that her name was Tang Bai. And she was currently broadcasting a live match to the death. A bronze-ranked healer just knocked out a silver-ranked assassin. Some of the people who saw this broadcast on the screen wondered, seriously, did the bronze challenge a higher rank? Besides, he's only a healer. How is that possible? The people in the arena wanted to finish her off and kill her, and Bai turned her attention to the fact that the audience was also delighted. Ran looked at the dying male eye and said with a haughty expression, "Now her life is in his hands. Will she beg for mercy or what?" She knelt down and begged him to forgive her and spare her. He asked her again, spare her. If it was him, she would have finished him off without a second thought. He was just passing by. Was it really that hard to leave him alone? Since it was all because of her expressions, she needs to remember her name. She needs to say that she's a fool, a shameless fool. Everyone was watching what was happening through a live broadcast, and one of the guys said, "Wow, this is cruel." Ran asked her again, or would she prefer death instead? She told him that she understood that. At that moment, one of the guys from her guild asked everyone to get out of the way in anger. The other guy said to him, "It's over. The guild leader will be beside himself when he finds out about this." She said she was wrong. It was her fault. She was a fool, a shameless fool. The audience sighed at her utterances and someone said not bad. They were lucky that Tang Bai started the broadcast. A girl replied, "Yes, the number of viewer broke the guild's record." The girl replied to her, "No, that's not the point. What did he want to achieve by challenging the silver rank? She should think about it." The girl gave her a startled look and said, "Does she mean to say that he was aiming for the first place in the top?" She replied while continuing to drink the tea from her mug. "That's right, and this person will be the key to their guild's revival outside the arena." A lot of guys met Ran and started asking him questions. Genius. How was he able to break the fog of deception? He's incredible. Let him add it to WeChat. He is an icon for them, a healer. But at this moment he was thinking that in the future the Wong 2 guild would try to take revenge for this. This day will definitely come, probably when the hyper subsides. He needs to make every effort to become stronger. In any case, he does not regret his choice. Huang 2 guild, meanwhile, may lie in a terrifying state with a weakened body moaned and screamed no. A man was pulling her arms and calling her an obscene girl. Her hands were hung up in chains, but at that moment the guild guy came running to her rescue and said, "Boss." The boss swung the whip at him and shouted angrily at him to get away from him. Because of such a blow, the guy began to bleed and he also fell to the ground, the boss said with a terrifying look. They have dishonored the Wang 2 guild, yet they dare to come back. A stupid bronze-ranked idiot had brought her to the state. He continued to beat her with the whip and she was already bleeding profusely and screaming with all her might. He approached her closely and said she doesn't like being a fool. They should find out. Their lives are worthless compared to the guild's reputation. At this moment, a sinister dog barked loudly and the guy turned around at the sound with a frightened expression on his face, after which he looked at Liu Mei Lai and realized that she was already unconscious, so he hated her so much. The boss's eyes were burning with a bright, sinister color, and at that moment a strange guy with a hat and red hair was sitting on a chair behind him. He fingered something in his hands and asked him again, why wouldn't he sell it? What would he say to that? The guild guy pounced on him and asked the question, where did he come from in the first place? The boss tried to stop him, but he dodged his hands and the boss shouted at him to come back. Now you freak. The man's eye lit up with a bright blue color. He made a special movement with his hand, after which a magic ray was released from his fingers, which illuminated the entire area with its light and created an incredible hole in the wall, from which the guy from the guild continued to run away. But the magic forces of this man destroyed his hand, and when he realized what had happened, he looked at his hand and screamed in fright. His hand, his hand. The blood started pouring out incredibly hard, and he groaned loudly in pain as he moved closer to the ground. The boss stopped in front of the guy in the hat. The dog was standing next to him. And there was also the guild guy who had lost his arm, who was still moaning in pain. The dog barked a few times. The boss bowed to the man and asked him to forgive him. Mr. Merchant, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. He's asking him. The merchant master rose from his chair with a deep sigh, after which a bright red magic light lit up in his eyes. He looked into the distance and asked a question. What about her? The boss replied. Of course it belongs to him from now on. He walked closer to Mei Lai, hanging on the chains, and chuckled. Then reached out to her, touched her face and said the money will be delivered within 3 days and now he's leaving. They'll see each other later. At the same time, he vanished into thin air. The boss wondered how it had happened, where it had come from in the first place. At this moment, the guild guy was lying on the ground, clutching his shoulder, and asked the boss to help him. He screamed loudly in pain. The boss started to get closer to him and ponder. But why would he need Liu Meilai? He glared at the boy and asked for someone to take him to the hospital. He began to think Byron is a merchant, an underground merchant. Operating among the guilds, no one knows who exactly he works for. All we know about him is that he sometimes shows up and offers people deals. Deals are often not profitable, but you just can't refuse it. One day a guild refused to make a deal with him, and in the end the entire guild was completely destroyed. After the deal is concluded, he leaves, leaving the contract money in payment. If someone is not interested in money, then such people can ask for anything. He sat down on the chair next to the barking dog and continued to think the deal wasn't so bad after all. But he had lost 2 guild members. He expressed a menacing look on his face and said this bronze-ranked healer must die. At the same time, Merchant Byron had moved to some rural location. The weather was rainy, but there was lightning in the sky from a thunderstorm. In his arms he carried Meilai, stepping on puddles and approaching the right place. Suddenly he deliberately dropped it and began to examine something in his hand, and she moaned, lying on the ground from the impact. He took out a crystal from his pocket. The name of this item is Transformation Stone, legendary rank use unknown. He used the stone, starting to reproduce the magical powers of this thing right above the belly of Meilai, who could only open her eyes and moan again. Byron was very surprised by what was happening. The magic stone lit up with a bright blue light and he said wow, after which he got up from the ground while Meilai continued to lie in the puddle. At this moment, a thunderstorm rumbled in the sky and bright lightning lit up the entire sky. Meanwhile, Ran was at home taking care of himself in the bathroom. He reflected that he wasn't the same person anymore. He had been humiliated by others all this time, and because of his weakness, he took it for granted. But from this day forward, no one will dare call him weak. He remembers the guy telling him to live and get stronger. Suddenly he felt something amiss and wondered what it was. His condition worsened. He grabbed the sink to steady himself and wondered why he felt so bad. He tried to stay on his feet, and at that moment the system window says the petrification effect is removed. He sat down on the sofa, clutched his head and started to think he was so tired. He absolutely didn't think that the side effects would be so strong. He began to feel very short of breath and his eyes were gradually closing. But suddenly he saw something in front of him and wondered, is this? What is it? It was a magic stone. At this moment, Byron was walking down the street in the rain, holding an umbrella in his hand. He adjusted his glasses and looked into the distance with a malicious look. 2 days later, the main hall of the Hunters Association, Songren, wearing a solid jacket, said he's so bad at healing. Most people awaken innate abilities, but he doesn't even think to activate them. He and the other guys looked at the system window, which showed Madness Potion price 24,600, Demon Rock price 31,500, Awakening Stone price 200,000, Fairy Tale price 5,590. Demon Fang price 5,201. He looked at it carefully and said since the awakening is unlikely to happen on its own, they need to rely on the awakening stones. However, the prices are quite high to say the least. It looks like he'll have to go to the troll mine, but he'll need to be in a special group to get the awakening stones. But if he enters a dungeon, the system will change his configuration. Taking people into a group is like killing them. Mutated Earth Elemental and Snow Queen. So many tough moments. He scratched the back of his head, yawned, and suddenly heard someone call his name. He won. What was going on? A girl named Siobai, who was unfamiliar to him, came up to him and said that she was glad to meet him, let him join her group, and then they would go to the troll mine together. She made this offer for him with a smile on her face. He looked at her more carefully, then narrowed his eyes a little and said, is her name Tang Siobai? She looked at him curiously and said, I wonder how he even knows her. He said he wished he didn't know her. He became an internet star thanks to her broadcast. It would be hard not to find out who she really is. She tried to keep a good relationship between them and asked him again, that's great, isn't it? She has been streaming for many years, but no one has gained such popularity in just one fight. Just as they were having a nice conversation, some strange guys noticed them together and one of them pointed at them and asked the question. Isn't that them? All the surrounding people took notice of them and started discussing. Is this a bronze-ranked healer challenging a silver-ranked one? His name is Song Ran, isn't it? No wonder Tang Xiaobai is right next to him. Several girls decided to approach him. Because he was a public figure, they held their phones in their hands and asked him to take a picture with them. Some of them commented on his new hairstyle as it really suited him. Someone asked him out of curiosity, is Tang Xiaobai his girlfriend? Xiaobai, who had moved a little to the side, was dumbfounded by what was happening and said with a deep sigh, "It only looks like his hand." Suddenly he said that she should go with him. After saying that, he grabbed her arm hard and started to lead her somewhere. She was surprised by this and asked the question, "What is going on? What is he doing? Where does it lead?" She looked fearfully into the distance and they approached the toilet where he pressed her against the wall and she was in a stupor. He asked her to listen carefully. Looking down at her with a confident voice, she should listen to him carefully. He tried to stay unnoticed, but because of her he is now in such a dangerous position. She said to him, "He's too close." He looked straight into her eyes with his bright blue eyes and said, "The Huang Tiu Guild has disgraced itself. Most likely they will start chasing after him." She blushed and looked away in shame, then said hesitantly, "She understands." Suddenly he, off from the wall, she saw his movement and grabbed his arm, then called him by name and said about the band. He turned to her, looked her in the eye, and asked her if this was what she really wanted. After that, he came close to her face and said then she must accept his condition. First of all the dropped awakening stones are his stones. He doesn't care about the rest of the winnings. Xiaobai spoke back to him with a surprised expression. So he still hadn't awakened an innate ability, she smiled and said. In addition, it turns out that he really is only a bronze rank. He moved a little distance away from her and looked into her eyes with bewilderment after the words were spoken, after which he added. Secondly, it will only be the two of them. He can't take anyone with him. Xiaobai gave him a startled look. Her eyes widened in disbelief when she asked him again, "What did he say?" "This is a group of 5 dungeon. He wants them killed there." He replied that he only had 2 requirements, so if she didn't agree then she could forget about it. She looked away in anger and said, "What nonsense. If the guild leader hadn't insisted on finding out everything about him, she would have already left this freak alone." She stamped her foot and asked Song Ran to wait for her, then ran after him and informed him. "All right," she agrees. Entrance to the troll mine. This dungeon has been around for a long time. Judging by the rumors, it suggests not to waste time. They should put on their armor and enter it right away. They stopped at the entrance to the mine, a bright magical portal among the ruined buildings of the city. They both stopped in front of it and continued talk. He told her that he had no armor, only a weapon. Startled, she asked him again. What did he say? There are only 2 of them, and he doesn't have any armor. Does he want them all to die there? He looked at her with indifference and said, "What's the big deal? They could die in any battle." He wasn't forcing her to go along with him, right? She replied in an attempt to reason with him. It was only his awakening and his life was at stake. He patted her on the shoulder and said this is already his concern. She just needs to protect herself. He took a step toward the portal and said one last thing. If she got scared, she could go out alone and she didn't have to worry about him. She clutched her head, closed her eyes and said this kid is an unreal schizoid. So what would she say to the leader if she didn't go with him? She considered the situation for a moment and wondered what she should do. If she couldn't explain in front of the guild leader, then she would have to do those boring broadcasts again. Suddenly she looked at the portal and saw that it was nowhere to be found. She looked around questioningly and wondered what was going on. Where did he go? She shouldn't be told that he went in there alone. How awful he was. Looking down on her, she's actually a gold-ranked summoner. Suddenly she cleared her throat, took a step towards the portal and said she doesn't care. She'll just come out if things go wrong. Song ran without her. He won't be able to find the boss with confident steps. She was approaching the portal, but suddenly something alerted her and she screamed and wondered what it was. She looked around and said no wonder the boss ordered her to find out about him. This guy broke through the dungeon alone. Inside the dungeon she saw many magic stones and slain bloodied monsters lying on the ground. Some of the monsters were still alive and fighting him, and he stood in the center and destroyed them one by one. Thanks to his sharp and skillful movement, Xiaobai covered her eyes with calmness and realized that this was actually quite fun. After that, she pointed her magic wand to the side and said in her mind, "Daki, this has to come out." A bright magic circle appeared under her feet and a bright spark remained from the wand, and she continued to say, "They must show this guy what they can do. He shouldn't underestimate them." At that moment, a large grey wolf with sinister eyes appeared next to her. It was her monster. At this moment in the dungeon, only moans and screams could be heard from the fierce battle that was taking place between the monsters and Sonran, who cut the monster's body parts with ease and thought that it was great. After being promoted, these silver-ranked monsters were no longer a threat to him. Even if this annoying evolution mode wasn't activated, no problem, it should not occur. Xiaobai pointed her wolf to the side and said, "Daki, let it join the fray." Ran spoke back to her. She doesn't need to do this. All the monsters have already been destroyed by him. As he spoke these words, the last few monster heads fell to the ground. Xiaobai swallowed her saliva in surprise, then started walking past the poisoned bodies of the monsters. With Daki and said while being terrified, she came across a huge pile of corpses on the way. She can agree that he is indeed capable of clearing the dungeon alone. He thanked her for this and she added to her words, but he would never be able to beat the dungeon boss. He told her that if a person didn't try, they wouldn't know, and then he asked her to look into the distance. There were 2 elite monsters ahead. If he's not mistaken, the boss room should be right next to the gate. Although the previous monsters weren't very strong, the Lie guards are already opponents of a different level. The boss room is right behind these 2 elite monsters. Is it ready for this? She spoke back to him with a serious expression that he didn't even have to ask. He pointed his finger to the side and informed her that in that case, he would leave these 2 monsters to her. If she can't do it, then what about the others? She told him that those expressions were enough. He should stop looking down on everyone. She pointed the magic stick to the side and called for Daki to go. And then they would show him what they were capable of. Daki barked loudly in response, then abruptly jumped and headed for the monster. Ran wished them luck. Xiaobai ordered Daki to attack the monster's head on and tear it to pieces. Daki continued to approach the monster at an incredible speed, opening his mouth, revealing huge fangs and bright magical eyes, after which he flew up and activated the shape change, the shape of a werewolf. Daki landed in the shape of a werewolf, swung his paw and hit one of the monsters, then continued his attack by swinging his paw. Xiaobai then ordered the attack boost to be activated, after which the Daki's claws increased and it growled loudly and hit the monster even harder, then cut it into several pieces. Xiaobai said great, everything worked out well. Bake continued to swing his claws like sharp knives and bark loudly. Ran asked her a question with a sleepy expression. How much longer will this continue? Then he took a step, stepped on the remains of the monster, and said he's actually in a hurry and they're so slow. He knows he'll have to get his hands dirty. Isn't it too long with her abilities? This place is just an amusement park. Did she answer him when he managed to kill the second monster? How could he be faster than her? He has a bronze rank. He took another step and said it's true. He has a bronze rank and his level has already reached 37, which is comparable to the gold rank. He just hasn't been promoted yet. Xiaobai asked him in disbelief. What did he say? Why wasn't he promoted? He replied.
It doesn't matter. What's more important is that now he knows that she can protect herself. Now they have to fight with the boss. They both started for the gate and he stopped in front of it and said, but she should think about it again.
If she walked through that door, there would be no turning back. She chuckled and said angrily to him. Does he know that they've been through so many such dungeons? The Dakis are much stronger than he thinks. This is a magical wolf, a very strong summonable beast that simply tears to pieces his opponents off. It's level, he replied to her. Okay. Then he opens the doors. He pushed open the doors, which creaked violently. He went inside and thought about it, hoping that everything would go smoothly, but he just needed to get rid of those annoying noises. Xiaobai went to pick him up and told the Dakis to follow her. They would show him how strong they were. Suddenly she saw a blinding light and was surprised by it, and at that moment they received a system notification. Evolution mode is activated. Monster generation is initiated, Rand said. It's exactly as he thought it would be. Another notification has arrived. The generation has been completed and the developers hope that they will enjoy the game. At that moment the dust cleared and they saw a huge monster in front of them. Xiaobai's eyes widened in fright and she wondered why it was so huge. This monster was growling at them intensely and she continued to say such bosses shouldn't exist in dungeons of this level. The boss laughed at them and said quickly. It doesn't matter since they've already entered here, they'll have to kill this monster. It looks like the monster's main attribute is strength. It must be extremely clumsy at this moment. The monster abruptly began to turn around in different directions, and he continued to speak. Strange. He has a feeling that this will be far from easy. Xiaobai blurted out. Only he shouldn't be told that he
was scared. Why was he frozen right in front of the boss?
He kept swinging his club around and suddenly she screamed in fright.
Daki go. Daki rushed to run towards the monster, after which he took off sharply and the boss swung his club.
But Daki hit the monster's chest and it screamed and Daki bared his teeth, after which the monster continued its attack and did not stop swinging his club. But Daki was able to knock down this boss and it fell to the ground.
There was a fierce fight going on between the monsters. Xiaobai shouted to Daki that it was just a good fellow.
This boss looked incredibly strong. She didn't think it would be so easy.
Daki got up from his seat, after which Xiaobing smiled at Ran and said to him with a sneer. He didn't even have to do anything. Do you have something to say? He asked her again. Does she really think that's all? How naive she is. At this moment, the boss swung his arm and swung his club hard. She was very surprised by this and asked what was going on. Darky just finished it off, he replied as expected. Now he's officially welcoming her to his dungeon. She asked him again in her dungeon, what is he talking about? He replied, that he would explain everything to her later. Now they need to attack, this is the second phase of the boss. She should try to defend herself, if she has the strength left, she can help him.
She looked after him in fright and said his name, after which the monster, with a sinister expression, began to attack and hit the ground hard with the club. Ran jumped up and swung at the monster's head. He kept swinging his weapon everywhere he couldn't hit. He landed and said strange, his attacks don't really do any damage.
Zebai stared at the monster and said it looks like he knew this would happen from the very beginning. How many secrets does he still have? But from what she saw, he really is bronze rank. He doesn't even know that swords aren't effective against armored bosses. Only assassins and mages can kill such a boss. She doesn't know if it's possible to defeat this boss in its current state. Suddenly she noticed something amiss and wondered with fright what was going on. The Darky went to defeat this monster, but the boss sharply hit this club and attacked Darky, which caused it to fall to the ground and lay in a bloody state. Ziobai was very scared and said the name of her animal with tears in her eyes, but at that moment the boss got even angrier and launched his attack, swinging the club at them. Ziobai looked at the boss in fright and said it's over. She didn't expect to die here. Ran wondered if it was just assassins and mages. I think I'll have to use something. 3 days ago he found a magic stone and didn't understand what it was.
In the system description, it was written that it could be absorbed by the evolution sword.
He wondered if it could be absorbed, then he'll try it. He hoped that this thing didn't have any negative effects. The system window informed him that the assassin's form had been studied, and that the two-bladed sword had been transferred. This form grants assassin abilities and increases the critical attack chance by 15%. He wrapped both hands around his sword, and Siobai had a frightened expression on her face as she wondered what was going on with this sword. He swung his sword a few times, which gave off a bright magical light. Suddenly, Siobai realized that they were blades.
Is this a hunter with 2 classes? He looked her in the eye and asked the question, is she okay?
She asked him, he is a healer, how did he get a 2nd class? At this moment the monster looked at them ominously and he replied after taking a look at it. It doesn't matter at all right now, they need to deal with the boss first. The boss started throwing attacks at him, but Rain easily dodged the attack and lashed out with his blades at the boss. The boss glared at him angrily and hit him, causing him to fly off to the side. Siobai looked at what was happening in fright and said what a horror. It was used by a tyrant, that is the unique ability of large bosses. It is very dangerous. Ran continued his attack, but suddenly he got close to the monster and the boss grabbed its head with his hand and slammed it straight to the ground with all his strength and gave it a terrifying look. Siobai was very scared and said with a dumbfounded look,
this can't be happening. What a horror. The boss was already on its way to attack her, but suddenly it was set to fight to the end.
Ran jumped up from his seat and continued the attack, which she was very surprised. His face was covered in blood, but he continued to swing his blades in front of the monster, after which he turned to her and asked her if she couldn't defend herself, then she should retreat to a safer place.
She told him that he shouldn't say this nonsense.
She wouldn't back down for anything. Ran spoke back to her. He can't put Tang Siobai in danger. We need to end this fight now. He stopped in front of the monster, who looked at him with a sinister smile and suddenly raised his left foot and decided to step on Ran. But he in turn managed to jump up and point his blades at the monster from above, after which he struck at the monster. And this creature showed that it was dodging. Ran continued to attack and lash out again and again. Suddenly they were both dumbfounded for a moment and Ran swung his blade with all his might and hit the monster right in the head, after which the boss screamed very loudly and Ran landed calmly and the system window announced a notification. The system notification, the Troll Lord was defeated by a critical hit is generated maximum reward. He got the ability to hit accurately, accurate strikes, passive ability, critical hit chance increases by 2.5 times when hitting monsters' vulnerable spots, ignoring the armor of these creatures. Ran finished in Siobai asked Boss Assassin, he has 2 classes and abilities comparable to the gold rank. Where did he get this power from? She had never seen him use a healer's skill before. Ran ignored her and said that as they had agreed, the awakening stone was his. He went up to her and said that he had forgotten something. He reached his hand to her knee and healed her wounds. He said he wouldn't get sick now. She looked away, embarrassed, and thanked him. Ran said there was one more thing. A dagger appeared in his hand, and with a sharp movement, he held it to her throat. He said that he wanted to learn something from her. Darky immediately barked and started growling at Ran. Ran said that he had heard that magic wolves are very loyal creatures. They are ready to protect the owner at all costs. It seems that she has a great partner, but she knows what will happen if it attacks him, right? Sayobai was scared and told Daki to stop, but they can't attack him. They're no match for him. Ran put the dagger away and said that since she understood her position, he would put this one away. She'd only seen one of his fights in the arena, so he wondered why she'd followed such an incompetent healer into such a dangerous dungeon. What are its goals? She replied that her goals were actually simple. She was a member of the Clover Guild, and she had to find out if he was worthy to join the guild. From what she's seen, he's more than worthy. Ran asked the Clover Guild, a strange guild that is active in the media sphere.
Sayobai replied that they weren't what the rumors said they were.
They chose the entertainment industry to keep the guild afloat. To make him understand, she would start with the Siege Company 2 years ago.
At that time, the Clover Guild was the best guild in the city, even in the entire region.
Back then, the leader was an alpha hunter, and there were many elite hunters in the guild. They were among the strongest in the entire association. That was until an unbalanced boss appeared in the area they were responsible for. The power of this plant monster exceeded all their expectations. They couldn't resist it, they had to flee from there in terror. Many elite hunters were killed back then, seeing the growing number of people killed. Their guild leader bravely stepped into the front ranks. Thanks to her alpha hunter power, she personally defeated the boss. With this, she saved their guild from destruction. Of the elite hunters, only one survived, their current guild leader. As a result, their guild fell from the top into the mud, and now the Hunters Association has forgotten all about them. In order for the guild that their former had sacrificed herself for to survive, they had to resort to things that greatly damaged their reputation. Their leader does not want to do this. All this time she was looking for a hunter who will lead them to glory again. He must have the potential of an alpha hunter. Ran asked if it was alpha grade. She said it was the only way out for the guild. Everyone knows that alpha hunters are like monsters. There are only 9 of them in Area C, but looking for such people is like looking for a needle in a haystack. But their leader has not lost hope. She saw incredible potential in him after the battle in the arena. After what she saw here, she fully agrees with her choice, a bronze-ranked hunter who single-handedly cleared a gold-ranked dungeon and killed a very powerful boss. Even if it doesn't reach the alpha rank, it will definitely reach the royal rank, so she wants to invite him. Ran called out to her and gave her the stone, telling her that this was the ticket to the abyss that had fallen earlier. He turned around and told her not to look for him anymore.
She wanted to protest, but he turned around and said that he appreciated that her guild saw potential in him, but he was afraid that he wasn't the one they were looking for. He's not an alpha hunter. He thought back to the day when the entire group had died and only he was left. He looked away and said that he was just a bad luck person. Ziobai said that she didn't agree with this. In that case, where did he get such power from? Until a couple of days ago, everyone considered him a weak scum. He looked at her and said with a smile that it was true. After that, he went ahead and said that he was leaving. Ziobai looked at the stone and said that it was a smug jerk. He will definitely join the Clover Guild. She would never leave him alone. At that time, the car was driving along the road. The man told the leader that the troll mine had been cleared and it was just a 2-person party. Interestingly, one of them is the guy they were looking for today. She asked if he was talking about Rin. The man said that based on the association's data, he became very active after the test. A rookie dungeon, then an open battle with guild member Wong Tu. And after that, he single-handedly completed 11 dungeons in 3 days. Apart from sleeping, he doesn't rest at all. Such persistence is simply exciting. Still, in the past, everyone called him trash, which explains why he's so persistent. However, looking at how hard he tries, he remembers that person. She called him Liu and said that he could develop things beyond their control. Apparently it's time to meet him in person. She pressed the gas to the floor and said that they would meet this awakened one. Some time passed. Ran was lying on his couch at home and said that it had been 3 days. Since he had been working hard all this time, his strength had increased dramatically. But after clearing the troll mine that time, his level had only increased by 1. It seems that the further you go, the slower its level increases, but at least he has accumulated quite a lot of hunter points with his current abilities. He should at least be at the upper stage of the gold rank. He'll spend the next couple of days resting and planning his next move, and he doesn't know what innate ability he'll get from the awakening stone. Usually an ability that belongs to his class is given, but right now he's not even sure what class he has. He took the stone and said he shouldn't worry about it. It will only know when it activates it. He sat down on the sofa and looked at the stone. Then he squeezed it and his body began to be enveloped in power. There was a bright flash and after a while Ran opened his eyes and looked at his hand and said that he had awakened the pumping treatment. This ability consumes 15 mana and recovers 1% of lost health every second after activation. At this time, its resistance to negative effects is reduced by half due to the properties of the healing shield. Rand said that there is a fundamental difference between resistance to negative effects and invulnerability to negative effects, and looking at this minuscule amount of treatment, he thinks that it looks like he really is a lousy healer. Suddenly, someone rang the bell at the door and told him that it was already so late. Who was it? He went to the door and opened it to see two men standing in front of him. Liu Yi asked, "Is he Mr. Song Ren?" Ren confirmed his words and asked, "Who are they?" Liu Yi reached into his pocket and said that they were from the Hunters Association. He showed him his ID card and Ren saw that his name was Liu Xiaodong, the leader of the Central China investigation team. Xiaodong put away his identification card and said that since he was a hunter, he was asking for his cooperation in the investigation. He went into the man's house and said he hoped they hadn't bothered him too much. Ran asked him to wait and said that he would be happy to cooperate. But what had he done to make them break into his house in the middle of the night? Xiaodong said that he shouldn't play the comedy. They should know what happened. A group of 2 people cleared out the troll mine. What does he think about this situation? Ran said. They seem to know a lot about him. Since they know so much, what do they want from him? Xiaodong wanted to say something irritated. But Ran showed his abilities and said that even though he had used this awakening stone, he had only awakened another useless ability. He is still an incompetent healer. Nothing has changed. Xiaodong nervously adjusted his tie and said that he probably wasn't going to accompany the investigation. A woman came up to them and told Liu Xiaodong that he was so aggressive, but he wasn't some outsider. Xiaodong called out to her in surprise. And Ran thought, who is this woman? The woman looked at Ran and said that he had changed a lot. He was not doing business the way he used to. So will he let them in? This woman's name is Chao Jingyan, and she is the head of the investigation department of the Hunter Association of District C. After that, Ran led them inside and they sat down opposite each other. Ran wondered why the Hunter Association was looking for him. Is it because he enlisted a troll mine? No matter how fast he gets stronger, there's nothing wrong with that. Jingyan took a sip of tea from her mug and Ran asked, is it all because of the newbie dungeon mutation a couple of days ago or the case of the hidden boss? Jingyan said that in the first place there was no need for him to worry. The mutation had nothing to do with it and about the time his entire team was killed. They know it's not his fault. Their association has a branded system that records the activity of dungeon hunters, so they have an idea of some things even if he doesn't tell them everything. Let him answer as it is. Does he want to know the truth behind his mother's recent death? Ran was surprised and said that the investigation about this has not moved one iota. That's why he became a hunter, to find out the truth and get revenge, he exclaimed. What do they know? She said they couldn't tell him yet because he didn't have enough hunter points. The hunter's points determine what data they can access. His mother's death is confidential. Given his current strength, he has a long way to go before he can know everything. But the seasonal dungeon will open soon. If he agrees to this world-class event, then he can earn hunter points with interest. The name of this dungeon is the Sea of Forgetfulness, and also because of his recent achievements, she thinks he's willing to accept a rank upgrade. His abilities are at least gold ranked, right? Rand said that since it was his mother's death, he would cooperate with them. A Sea of Forgetfulness, he thought. He'll remember it at this time in the Clover Guild. Xiaobai explained everything to the guild head and said that she believed Rand's ability had already improved a lot since then. The head told her that she did a great job this time. Xiaobai thanked her and the head said that from what she said, he had become much stronger in a short period of time, and he had also met an incredibly strong boss that was much higher than a dungeon, which confirmed her candidacy for the Alpha League. In fact, according to the previous guild leader, it should also have a red interface. This is exclusive to Alpha League members. The dungeon system is different for them. From now on, they will keep a close eye on this guy. It's a pity he doesn't want to join them. He's a great opportunity to raise their guild. But when it comes to joining, she paused for a moment and Xiaobai looked up at her. The guild leader said that they never know in advance. She pressed the button and said that there were more important things to do right now. She opened the blinds and said that they had descended to the level of a small guild. But when they rose again, the influence of the Clover Guild would hold on to it at all costs. She looked at the Night City and said that she was talking about the seasonal dungeon, the Sea of Forgetfulness. Xiaobai replied that she understood. The next morning, Ran came to the lobby of the Hunters Association. All the hunters exchanged greetings and Ran walked over to them. He was wearing a cap, glasses and a hood, and he thought that this outfit should not be recognized. He's just like some famous person. Last night he asked what he should do for them. Jing Yan replied that they couldn't update and evaluate the hunter ranks here. Also, given his situation, she can only make a reservation for him. When the time comes, they'll find someone to contact them. Ran was currently climbing the stairs to the Hunter Association office. He went to the 2026 cabinet and said it was here. He knocked on the door and it opened. He looked inside and started to introduce himself, but Byron interrupted him and asked if his name was Ran. He had been waiting for it for ages. He grinned and lifted the ashtray in the air, twirling it around with his foot, and then abruptly got up from his seat and was very surprised. Byron threw an ashtray at him and told him to show him what he could do. Ran concentrated and knocked the ashtray aside, smashing through the office wall. All the people immediately looked at the huge hole in the wall of the building and Ran asked Byron who he was. What does he want? Byron put on his gloves and said he wanted to evaluate it. He walked towards it and thought that it was a woman, Jingyan, who was dragging him into all sorts of nonsense, but it was nothing. It was still a rare awakened. It's just that he doesn't know if he deserves such a title. He stretched out his hand and all the fragments of the building immediately froze in place. After that, he pointed the shards directly at Ran and he asked, "Is this levitation air element strength?" He started chipping away rocks and said that if this is a so-called test, it looks too weird. He doesn't want to hurt him. He hopes he can explain everything. Byron asked if he didn't want to hurt him. He laughed and Ran charged towards him using a balanced sword. He swung his sword, but Byron stopped it with one finger and said he was so cocky. Ran gritted his teeth and thought, did the sword's effect not work? Byron pushed the sword away and asked if he really thought he could hurt it. This world is cruel. The slightest indecision can lead to a huge defeat. He prefers not to kill or punish. It seems arrogant to him, but for a pro opponent it is an insult. With that, he hit Ran and he fell to the floor, saying that it made him so mad. He started to get to his feet and said that he kept talking and talking. How annoying he was. At the same time, Ran found himself in a completely different place and realized that he was on the roof of the Hunter Association. So what happened? Byron said that the difference between them was too great. He hadn't even strained yet. Ran looked up and said that this guy actually flies. Byron easily floated in the air and said that it seems that he can't beat him. Then he will simplify the test. If he can take it one hit, then let him think that he has passed. Will he agree to it? Ran thought that this guy didn't think much of him, so he would use all his strength. He switched to the assassin form and used the deflating healing ability. He increased his strength, speed and resistance and thought that he wouldn't back down. Byron smiled and said that there really was something about him. This means that he should not feel sorry for him. He thought that the fate of a person is like a stone that carries the streams of time. He used a lightning-fast technique to me, surging tornado. A huge tornado appeared in the sky and he wondered if he could handle it. Let him not fail him. At the same time, there was an explosion and a wave of force passed through. Ran said that it didn't seem like this explosion was this guy's ability. Byron landed on the roof and said it looked like they couldn't continue the test. Since that was the case, then he would consider it passed. Ran asked in surprise, does that count? Then what is his rank? Byron replied that the point was to find out if he could be admitted to the rank assessment at all. To be honest, he was doing it out of personal interest. Ran cursed at him and Byron said he was sure he had just heard the explosion. He didn't have time to play with it. Let him look over there now. Ran followed his gaze and asked, is this a portal? Byron said it was almost a grey gate that appeared 50 years ago.